Yo, welcome back to the Further Your Lifestyle podcast, conversations on lifestyle, passions, and hustles. My name's Chris Fairlong, I am your host, and I'm super excited to be back here having the conversation with you. And today, episode 54, which is just, once again, I'm just totally grateful for the progress that I've been able to make, but not from my own doing, but from having you guys listening and showing up and being part of this community. And I want to say a big thank you to you. If you've listened to 1, 10, all the episodes, no matter how many it is, it means the absolute world to me. This week, actually what's been resonating with me the most is I actually just finished listening to or / reading the book called The Unfair Advantage, How You Already Have What It Takes to Succeed. And that's by Ash Ali and Hassan Kuba. And I have to say, this book brings some really fresh perspective and some realistic ideals when it comes to, where we are in our journey. No matter where you are, I think it's going to be relevant. And even if you're at the start, in the middle, or way far ahead in your journey to whatever you're defining as success, this book really does open up some, fresh perspectives and give some great insights and maybe how you can change the game and leverage your unfair advantage. In short, really, the book really touches on why you cannot compare to others. What we see on the outside is not the reality behind the scenes. We all have circumstances which set us apart from others. We can learn to leverage these advantages, and there's also a framework to help find your unfair advantage, and that's called the Miles Framework. So let's dive into it. Let's discuss the unfair advantage. Now, this isn't a book review. It's more so just some fresh takeaways in which I wanted to share back to you. It's coming fresh off the boat in the sense that I've been able to kind of just listen to this over the last couple of weeks, and now I want to really just take the intent and maybe help inspire you to have an inward look at yourself and see, maybe you didn't even realize this, but right under your nose that you have what it takes to enable yourself to actually move forward and to actually turn the odds into your favor. And sometimes we just need to hear it from someone else, or sometimes we just need some fresh perspective, and maybe this interpretation of what I've taken away from the book will enable you. Otherwise, I would greatly encourage you to go check out the book. So what does this all mean? The unfair advantage? Well, essentially there's two components to life and success that is kind of defined in this book, and that is fair play and the unfair advantage. And the best way to describe these is essentially fair play is we all have 24 hours per day. You can't control that 24 hours of time. It is set. No one has 25 hours. No one has only 10 hours. We have the same amount of time. It's the same with life as well. Nothing changes and no one can change that. The unfair advantage, however, is how we leverage those 24 hours, meaning what you can control in those 24 hours is the greatest advantage anyone can have. And of course, it depends on what you're doing as well, right? And we're going to touch on that shortly. But as a podcaster, I guess I can influence the number of episodes I record in a day. I can influence the number of guests that I interview. I can influence the number of recordings that I make, etc., etc. I could do 1, I could do 10, I could do more. As this number increases, this enables me to potentially to become a better podcaster, having more episodes and being able to grow my podcast. Another example, I guess, would be maybe you're a rising basketball player. You can determine whether to shoot hoops and practice 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, 3 times a day or more, however it may be. Or you could choose just to do 30 minutes. And once again, the more you increase the practice and play time or the experience, the higher the chance you have in becoming a better player, thus maximizing your unfair advantage. And sometimes, we're going to go through the Miles Framework. There's a whole bunch of different characteristics or points that help enable you. The spin on this is maybe you have access to doing this more. You have the ability to do so. Maybe you have some of the tools and equipment close by or in your hands ready to go, or simply it might be just due to the priorities and responsibilities that you have. The reality is nothing gets better with time. It rather gets better with the number of times you have done a particular thing, and that is usually bound in that time that we all have. So a real life example of this, of my own unfair advantage I bring to the table is, especially when we talk about, if you don't know the story, I stepped away from my 9-to-5 gig at the start of last year, and that was in 2021. And it was a well-paying job. It was a great job, but I wanted to be able to take a chance on myself. And when I thought about that, the priority was to start this podcast, but also I needed to be able to work for myself to pay some bills, make some money on the side and help, I guess, live life. And I'm going to start to refer to the Miles Framework from the book and how basically use this as a way to help you understand what this whole book is about and leveraging that Miles Framework and maybe through my own lens and how it's been applicable to myself, you can start to see how maybe it's going to be applicable for yourself. So Miles, what is the Miles framework? Well, that is money, intelligence, location and luck, education and expertise, and status. So coming back to my story around, stepping away and taking a chance on myself, the first one from the Miles framework is money. So I had been working for about 7-8 years full time with a 6-figure salary, so it was quite lucrative, building investments, building assets, and building, I guess, a stable savings foundation. And that was going to enable me to, when I was going to take this chance on me, to have something in place already. Worst case, I didn't have to worry about money because I already had some savings. I had some emergency funds, I had some assets, I had some investments. I had the funds in place to know that, worst case, I have a backup. If I don't make any income, it gives me that advantage to know that I can continue to progress and pursue these passions without the stress of money. And I didn't have such responsibilities around, providing for a family, all their needs, and, having to pay for an education or someone else's education and all those kind of additional responsibilities. That was part of my circumstance. I didn't have to worry about that. So there was a less expense there. So that was an unfair advantage that I have because not everyone would be in that situation to be able to leverage that. So it was definitely something under my belt that I had. The second one is intelligence and insight. And for me, when creating this podcast, I knew I wanted to create a side business to enable some additional income. I didn't want to have to rely on my savings, but at the same time, I wanted to be able to document that journey from me leaving the 9-to-5 and, pursuing these passions and, maybe give some inspiration how others can do that too. So naturally, the quickest thing for me was to share, document, and leverage was my reselling journey and to make some dollars on the side. Now, in terms of intelligence and insight in this area, there was some few quick wins here for me because I had always done thrifting and op shopping and somewhat of a reselling, I guess, as a side hobby on a small scale. I had done enough to, I guess, increase my chances enabling to jump into it and then start to scale it. But I wasn't really talking about it much, or I wasn't really documenting or sharing that. And secondly was being a YouTuber. And being a YouTuber, I knew there was so many different community niches and there was, places you could go to chat to other people with like-minded ideas. And I found the reselling community, and because they were YouTubers, I was a YouTuber, we could kind of connect, and that made it quite easier to actually inject and get myself into their community. But then I was able to just consume their content and soak it all up. And I guess it enabled me to learn quicker, taking, from their mistakes and things like that. So I didn't have to make the same mistakes. And then the third one that comes into play with intelligence and insight was my previous job was a project manager, and basically on a day-to-day basis I was managing numbers, dollars, risks, issues, governance, systems, and people within multi-million-dollar projects. So I guess in some sense that's like running a small business of sorts, right? So thus jumping into the reselling world, I had the ability to leverage these skills to enable, I guess, me to have a better insight of how numbers need to be, how to operate a business, how to keep them clean, how to understand them and understand the basics. That kind of steps me ahead of someone with no business background jumping into this game or going into reselling to make a living from it, right? And leveraging this enables me to make my life a little bit easier when coming to this. It avoids profit leakage, and it means I can actually act on things a little quicker, having a better insight of the data, such as reselling, previously when I was doing it as a hobby, and also understanding the business side of things as well. So that gives me a huge competitive advantage, or in this case, an unfair advantage when it comes to intelligence and insight. And of course, this is going to be different for everyone. A good example would be, someone might have a huge understanding of, gene brands or brands of genes. And, I don't really have much insight of that, but someone that does, they're going to go in and they're going to be able to quickly find the items that are going to be worth the most money. Once again, this comes with their own knowledge, their own experience, their own insight. So number 3 of the Miles framework is location and luck. Now, location, I still live at home, so this is a huge unfair advantage compared to other people. Leveraging this means I have low cost overheads. I have no mortgage. I don't have to, have this concern of worrying about having to pay rent and all those things. And I have the ability to work with freedom and, more space of sorts. And that means I'm able to grow my podcast and my business from home with little overhead, which, that location just makes it so much more lucrative for me. Now, of course, sometimes location is also where you're situated in terms of, are you close to a city? Are you close to people that have the same, game plan? Are you close to an op shop, or are you close to a place where you can source items? Are you close to a place where you can record or have a studio for your podcast? So all these different things come into play when we're talking about location. And then the other L of this is luck. And when it comes to luck, this only comes through taking action, doing more things, meeting more people, connecting, sharing your journey, and creating information and giving. These are all things that, I guess, as elements, contribute to opportunities being made available. And I found that because I've been doing a lot more things, putting myself out there, chatting with more people, building a community, sharing my journey, it's been really great to be able to get some really cool guests on the podcast, and also get some opportunity in some of the reselling bulk lots that I've been able to purchase. And that is, once again, from putting myself out there. It's not that I'm just a lucky duck because I didn't do anything and people are just, rocking up and giving me everything. It's because I've put in the work, I've got my face out there, I've got my name out there, and then people have come to me from that, and that's created the opportunity. So that's how luck has come into play. The next point is education and expertise, and this is part of the Miles framework once again. So like I mentioned about insight and intelligence, my background is actually predominantly IT. So I did a Bachelor of Information Technology, but then I started to really further my focus into project management, giving me somewhat expertise in managing business and numbers, as mentioned before. And from a podcast side of things, being in that tech space and IT, I knew the environment of podcasts. I knew, what I wanted and what was required to make that happen, whether it was some of the tech gear and not super expensive stuff, just enough to make sure that I can get started and get it happening. That enables me to execute very quickly through software and through application and through tools. And at the same time, I've been listening to podcasts for the last, 7-8 years and following many other people in this space. And once again, because I've got somewhat of an education of understanding how these things work, being a bit more tech savvy, it enabled me to jump into it very quickly. Also, being a YouTuber is very similar to the podcast. I'm used to talking to the camera. I'm used to having these types of conversations. It became a bit more natural, and I didn't have to worry about learning from zero. So once again, education and expertise, leveraging that unfair advantage. And we all have these. Don't forget that. Now, the next one of the Miles framework, and the last one, is status. There is that cliche statement around, it's not about what you know, but who you know. And sometimes that's what it is. It could be in terms of the people in your network that you can leverage in terms of helping you grow, or the people wanting to help you. And I guess for me, that this has been true. I've built up a lot of friendships and relationships, and there's plenty of people that have way bigger networks than myself. But because of this, I was able to get some pretty cool guests on the podcast who have large followings, have large groups of friends and things like that, and also leveraging the reselling community and things like that, which enabled, once again, to have a bigger growth, or a bigger, I guess, awareness circle when doing the podcast. But most of all, I think the key one that people forget about is, when it comes to status, is the inner stuff and working on your self-esteem and your confidence. And that sometimes is what represents your status to other people. And this is a great way that you can offset, I guess, if you don't have a high status of network with people of influence. And, I've got some really great friends and people that have been able to help get me to places which maybe I couldn't have gotten by myself, but at the same time, leveraging my own confidence and self-esteem to just get out and give this a go. We all have this. This is fair play. We all have a level of confidence and self-esteem, but working through that, working on making it better and, making it stronger and making yourself more comfortable with it, definitely gives you that unfair advantage. So I think, once again, that kind of comes back only through time and experience and, being willing to get out there and give it a go. So that is the unfair advantage in an example form. And yes, it's a lot about me and what I've been doing, but I wanted to share that to help you give some understanding of what these examples could be. Now, in the book, it actually goes through some really great examples from some of the, big people that we all know of, like the Richard Bransons and things like that. But also it goes through some people maybe you didn't know, and it talks about how they've been able to leverage. It talks about their own stories, the authors of this book. And before we even wrap up, I still have a bit more things that I want to go through. And it really comes down to some questions that I want to ask you. And that is, well, one, what is your unfair advantage? And let's go through some, some thoughts and some statements here of, maybe you want to start a YouTube channel, but struggle with the tech, but maybe you have a partner who is a videographer. That would give you an unfair advantage. Someone that knows all these skills, that has been doing it for a while, they're able to set you up for success quite quickly. Or maybe you're training to be a tennis player and you're good friends with one of the Aussie top players, or your parents are, and they're able to connect you, get you some really cool coaching, and get you kind of ahead of other people in terms of be coached by someone that's, already at that greatness level. Maybe you have a business idea and you have friends and family who are willing to invest time and money into it. It could be just they want to put $10,000 into your business and help you grow and scale quicker, whereas most people would have to do that from zero up. So once again, that's an unfair advantage. And maybe the other one is maybe you want a job of your dreams and your uncle works at a company, and they can help provide a reference or some insight of maybe the best way to get into that company. So these are all examples, and once again, it comes down to skills and things like that. And I think a lot of the time we probably take a lot of this stuff for granted. We don't realize it, and there is so many different things that you can bring to the table when it comes to an unfair advantage, and there's so many that only you can actually bring to life and make happen. No one else is going to be able to do that for you. I might be able to, or someone might be able to look at it and say, hey, you're really good at this, and give you some, inspiration or some encouragement, but you're the one that has to act on it. Now, the other thing here is, and this is key, is not to be so stuck on looking and seeing how others progress and their success, in air quotes, as such, because they all have a story. There's always more than what meets the eye and what we see. And they too will have an unfair advantage, which they've been able to leverage and get them to where they are today. Whether they intentionally know that or not, we all have one. And I think you need to figure out what you have, and that will help change the perspective and help change the conversation. And it will also enable you to tap into these things and to start to move forward quickly. And it's not about beating the game as such. It's more so about understanding that you have these tools and mediums at your disposal, and you have access to them to enable you to move forward. So it would make sense to leverage that and to see what you can do with it. Because as others, we all wish that we had them in our own, depository of skills, needs, traits, and all that jazz. But we don't, and you do. It's more about you need to find what they are. And I mentioned this just before. Sometimes the unfair advantage is actually the things that we take for granted, and things that come natural to us that others wish they could do. Whether it's, maybe you're really good at doing calligraphy, writing, or maybe you're an amazing artist, or you can sketch things really, really easy. For some people, they look at it and think, this isn't good, but people from the outside are looking at it like, this is incredible, I wish I could do that. And those kind of things, you don't realize maybe what you have just sitting right in front of you in terms of being able to apply as an unfair advantage. And once again, I don't want to make this sound like it's dirty and that, you're trying to be, taking advantage of other people. It's not about that. It's about taking what you have, the skills and the things that you've been able to create and learn over years of experience and education or your own upbringing, and leverage that, because it only makes sense to you because you have that. That is you. That is part of you. So make the most of it. So I really want to encourage you. You need to have a deep look internally and see if you can make a list of these things. What are you good at? What are some of the things that come natural? And as we went through the Miles framework, what are some of these areas that you can play back into your own life? And the Miles framework was money, intelligence, location/luck, education/expertise, and then status. So go through and see how these can be leveraged, how these have any relevance to you in terms of, do you have something in those categories that you can leverage as an unfair advantage? Have a deep look, go through and list them out, and apply them to some of your goals and ambitions, and build up a list of these things that you bring to the table, right? As I mentioned, via this Miles framework, and this will enable you to launch forward with some ease. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it will give you some, that ability to make it seem a little bit easier. And maybe you're still having doubts. Maybe you think there isn't something there. Well, let's chat about it. You can reach out to Instagram at Further Your Lifestyle, or hit us up on Twitter at Further Your Life, or drop us an email via hello@furtheryourlifestyle.com. And let's continue the conversation. Sometimes we just need to have a conversation to understand that we have some untapped potential, that we have something here sitting right in front of us to leap forward and help us, get to where we're wanting to go. And go read the book, go buy the book, go check it out, and maybe that will help you as well. I listened to it and I found that a lot more, relevant for how I like to learn, but maybe you want to read it. Go check it out. I really encourage you, because once you start to realize what your unfair advantages are and start to tap into those, it will enable you to grow a little bit quicker and enable you to scale quicker. And this isn't about making money. This isn't about being the best. This is about ensuring that you're getting, I guess, the best bang for buck of your time, right? And if you've got goals, ambitions, and dreams and passions and all that, putting this with those, it just makes sense, right? Because you're going to be pursuing that anyway. You may as leverage what you have at your disposal right in front of you and accept it and go with it, right? Because there's no point looking at other people wishing you had that when you don't, because they're probably looking in wishing they had what you had, right? And I think once you realize that, understand whether it's a confidence thing, whether it's a money thing, whether it's just, access to people or location, whatever it may be, find that unfair advantage and make the most of it. It's been an absolute pleasure having the conversation with you. I've enjoyed this. It's a really good book, right? I'm very passionate about this and I want to see you succeed and I want to help you succeed. So as I mentioned, you can reach out, we can continue the conversation. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this podcast, if there's something here that resonated with you, the best thing that you can do for me is share it. Send it to someone that you think it might resonate with. Share it to someone that maybe they need to hear this. It would mean the absolute world to me. I have a goal to grow this podcast, right? And reaching out to you to have your support, listening is one thing, but if you want to take it that step further, it would be greatly appreciated. Anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure having the conversation with you, and you have a wonderful day. Cheers. Now, if you didn't know, we do have the podcast merch, and this is with a key focus of enamel pins. Now, if you haven't checked these out, make sure you do, because the intent of these are really just to be a small token and a reminder for you to charge on, to push on, and to further your lifestyle. Whether it is a gift for someone else to encourage them or maybe to inspire them, or maybe it's a way to motivate yourself, or you can simply just make a purchase to simply support the podcast, which would be greatly appreciated. We do also have some sweaters and some long tees, so make sure you check it out. Link in the description and in the show notes. Really do appreciate it. Cheers.